So far in my World of Warcraft journey, I have leveled 3 entire characters, my warrior, my mage, and my beautiful druid. Each having their own entirely different leveling experience. I also decided to try out the horde side of things with my rogue, which has been great so far. However, we have put the horde adventure on pause for now because I recently gained the need for a hunter. But what could I possibly need a hunter so badly for? Well, that's a story for another time. So for now, it's time to return to the Alliance once more as I attempt to level my first ever hunter alongside my trusty pet, Gerald. Last time, we managed to achieve level 35 by exploring through Hillsbrad and Stranglethorn Vale, and of course, running Scarlet Monastery a lot. And we've even managed to get ourselves some pretty huge upgrades, like the Trip Runner dungarees and randomly finding an Iron Weaver off of a mob. But today is a big day, because we are closing in on level 40, which means our goal is to purchase our first mount. Starting the day off, we had a little bit of an issue. Subscribers of the channel will know that I seem to have a bit of a habit of skipping quests and leaving zones early. Unfortunately, that's left me in a bit of a position where I currently have no zones to go and quest in. However, once I hit level 36, I should be able to go and freely quest around Dustwallow Marsh. So, the only option I really had was to go and grind out XP in Scarlet Monastery, which we had already done quite a lot of. However, in the previous video, we were limited to Scarlet Library and Scarlet Graveyard, which are okay for XP, but not great. However, we are now high enough level to head into the Armory portion of the dungeon. Now, in my opinion, Armory is the best of the 4 dungeons. When I think of Scarlet Monastery, this is exactly what I think of. Long, winding halls that are absolutely filled to the brim with mobs. But it's not just because of how the dungeon feels, but it's also extremely efficient for grinding XP, simply because of how many elite mobs there are. Now, this dungeon really does take me back to the beginning of the year when our journey together all started, because I was grinding out my first ever character, and this dungeon was like the first big grind, spending hours and hours running it over and over again, desperately trying to hit level 40, but also trying to get every piece of loot out of here that I could, because the loot in this dungeon is some of the greatest leveling loot in the entire game, not only providing warriors with insane stats, but also giving them one of the most iconic looks in World of Warcraft. Now, although the items are male items, which we will be able to equip very soon, but unfortunately, the items are only providing strength, which is only good for the melee weapons, and what we want is agility. So as much as I would like to say that we're going to run the dungeon until we get every piece of gear, sadly there would just be no point in doing that. But after a good 15 to 20 minutes of clearing out the mobs, we get to the one and only boss of the dungeon, Herod, who I would say is a very iconic World of Warcraft boss, because in retail, one of the greatest abilities is Blade Storm, which if I'm not mistaken, originated from this boss and his weapon, Ravager, where he spins his weapon around dealing massive AoE damage, which I can't lie, was a bit of a pain for us, because Gerald doesn't seem to recognize mechanics very well, and he was just going at him, man. You know, Gerald was seeing red and wanted that Herod ass, but we get him down and Herod dropped the shoulders, which if I'm not mistaken is the rarest of all of the pieces of loot, but we also got a very nice chunk of XP. Now luckily this group that I was in were planning to grind out quite a bit and were heading into library, so obviously I joined them. Now library is fine, I don't mind it, but I definitely wouldn't say that I enjoy it. Plus you don't get as much XP, so there's that as well. This dungeon does have 2 bosses though, and the first one is Houndmaster Loxey, and the second is Arcanist Doan, who does also have a mechanic. Simply, he casts Detonation, which deals massive damage, and the only way for you to avoid it is by hiding behind a wall. And he dropped the Illusionary Rod, which is a pretty nice pickup for the casters. And as you can see, the XP we gained just is nowhere close to what we get in Armory. But after this run, we headed back into Armory, which was basically the exact same as the first time we did it. We clear our way through the long halls until we get to Herod, and Gerald did not have a very good time again, but he did drop the Scarlet Leggings, which is weird because on my warrior I was able to get every piece of loot possible from him except the leggings. I probably did 30-ish runs on my warrior and I didn't see them once. But unfortunately, after that, this group disbanded. So I went off to get myself another group for the dungeon, which was once again the exact same as last time. And after killing Herod, we managed to hit level 36. Now that we are high enough level, it's time to head out for a bit and into Dustwallow Marsh. Now normally, this would be quite a lengthy run. However, there is two ways to get there quicker. Firstly, take the boat in Menethil, and that would take us straight to Theramore. However, if you look at the map, you can see that there are a bunch of quests leading into the zone, and I wanted to do those on the way in. So I would need to get to Ratchet by taking a boat from Booty Bay, and it just so happens that I happen to get the Booty Bay flight point off camera. And well, after a few minutes of waiting on the boat to arrive, we were on our way to Ratchet. Now you might say that going this route is still a stupid idea since I've still got to run. Well, that's right, but if we're being realistic, the run only takes a few minutes, especially since we have aspect of the cheetah. And as we were entering into the zone, I came across an NPC called Stinky offering a quest, and well, it was an escort quest. So off me and Stinky went, killing lots of different wildlife as we went. Now I love escort quests, because it's like role-playing having a friend. I mean, imagine the quests we can go and he's running away. Well, with my new best friend gone and never to be seen again, I started moving deeper into the zone until I came across an NPC called Swampi. Everyone around here has nicknames. I want one. So I grabbed my quest and then made my way to Theramore. So yeah, I guess I could have maybe just gotten the boat here all along. Once here, I went through all the normal procedures of collecting every quest in sight and making sure to collect the flight point, as I very often forget to do that and then regret it later. So I started off by running up the east coast, killing turtles in order to rip out their tongues, until I came across this little island. Now the island was absolutely swarming with murlocs, which usually would be a death trap. However, I need to kill those exact murlocs for my quest. And besides, I unleashed my world buffs and thought, what could possibly go wrong? And at first it was great. I was getting so much quest progression until I got a random message saying run. And I mean, that's pretty creepy as it is. And that's when two random rogues emerged from the sea and tried to attack me. Now I did my absolute best, using concussive shot to daze the first one and then using Gerald's charge to stun the other. And it looked like I was going to get away until a random murloc decided to change that. Well, I guess that's my bad for forgetting about the sea rogues, because bearing in mind, in that direction is nothing. Like literally, the only thing to the east of this island is water. Like, what are they doing? So I waved goodbye to my world buffs and swapped lair, and then finished off what I needed to do on the island, before heading over to the very northwest of Dustwallow to the spider area, where we needed to kill spiders and loot unpopped spider eyes. But apart from a few other people being here, this quest was completely fine. And that's when I had another look at my map, and I noticed that there was a few quests that had popped up. I don't know if I just wasn't high enough level when I got here or what, but that only made me more curious as to what they were. So I quickly turned in a quest to this ogre and made my way over there. But when I got here, there was no NPCs standing at the side of the road waiting for me, but instead the quests were coming from some random crap scattered across the floor. And well, all three of the quests wanted me to return to Theramore. So naturally, I did, but not before paying another visit to Swampi to turn in a quest. And his follow-up quest was simply to give him a sword. And I remember doing this on my druid, and I remember the sword being quite expensive on the auction house, but I wanted to check just to make sure. And yeah, I'm not going to pay that much just for a little bit of XP. So instead, I turned in the quest that I had randomly picked up, which sent us all the way back to the west side of the zone, where I had to unexpectedly fight a very angry man, which was rather inconvenient because I had a trail of mobs behind me, and it was a pretty close call, but we managed to defeat the angry man and could return to Theramore to turn in the quest. And that was it. we had fully completed Dustwallow Marsh, apart from the stupid sword quest, but I think that's pretty reasonable. Now, even though we had all that progression, we still weren't level 37. What a predicament. So I once again decided to return to Scarlet Monastery. Now, I thought that we were so close to level 37 that a little library run will do just fine, since there's no point in doing an entire armory run. So we get to the end, and we slay Arcanus Dawn, and we were nowhere even close. And well, this group was actually going straight to armory, so I joined them. And we cleared through the long halls, and we get to Herod. And as we are killing him, we are just that close to level 37. I'm thinking, perfect, we'll kill Herod and that'll be us. Yeah, well, that wasn't the case. So off we go again. But this time, we were going to Cathedral, a dungeon that we hadn't done yet on this character. Now, I don't think I did it on my warrior, but on my mage, this dungeon was so incredibly fun, because we were able to clear the entire thing in like 3 pools, and it was just one of the coolest experiences I've had in World of Warcraft. However, with a hunter, a warrior, and a rogue, I don't think that'll be possible. So we casually cleared away every single mob in the dungeon, just for the maximum possible experience gain. But unfortunately, we accidentally pulled rather large, which sadly wiped us. But we respawned and we moved into the cathedral, where we pretty much have to kill everything inside, because once you tag the boss, every single mob that's left alive starts sprinting towards you, which is fantastic for spell cleave groups, but for us, not so much. So we kill High Inquisitor Fairbanks, who dropped us some dusty mail boots, thanks for that, and we can then move on to the final boss, Scarlet Commander Mograine. And he's actually quite an interesting one, because you kill him and you think, wow, we did it, woo. But then High Inquisitor Whitemane comes out to resurrect him, and then we absolutely destroy both of them together. Fantastic. And I don't think I realised just how slow leveling becomes, because again, I was a little bit disappointed with the amount of XP that we gained. But regardless, we did what we came here to do, which was to reach level 37. Now that we are level 37, it's once again time to think about where to go next. And well, I wanted to return to Stranglethorn Vale to do the quest down south, but unfortunately, that was not an option yet, because we just weren't high enough level. So I decided to go to everyone's favourite zone, Desolace. Now getting there was a bit of a pain. We obviously hadn't gotten the flight point there yet, so I purchased myself a portal to Darnassus, and I then could catch a bird from there to Stone Talon Mountains, and could begin the lengthy run to Desolace, which is fine, because past level 20, you pretty much will never see Stone Talon again. And after a good 10 minutes of running, we had reached our destination in Desolace, where we did everything we normally do, like picking up the quests and running straight past the flight point. Like, honestly, I don't know how I do it sometimes. But first, I ran over to the west, where I could turn any quest at a random box, and then immediately take that box back to Nigel's Point so that I could start the next part of the quest. So to start off the real quests, I first went over to the Burning Blade compound, which, if I'm not mistaken, are a cult involved with the Old Horde. I don't know if that's true, and actually I don't even know where I learned that. But we needed to find an NPC inside of one of the buildings. However, the room was just swarming with mobs, but they were all lower level than me, and we were just demolishing our way through them. So I turned in my quest with her, and we then had to go over to the building next door to collect her pendant. So I went over there and I met a little druid. So I invited him to join me and we could take down the mini boss together. And then it was back over to the other building to turn it in. Now, unfortunately, I didn't realize that the next part of the quest was an escort, and I accidentally started it without my little druid friend. However, he didn't seem to mind too much, and as a thanks for sticking around anyway, we both went back and we did the quest again. We then said our goodbyes and we could move on to doing our next quest. So I headed down to the eastern side of the zone, where I could find all of these centaurs that I had to kill and steal their ears. And these must be some deaf-ass centaurs, man, because I was here for a while. So I got to 14 out of 15 ears collected, and I noticed on the map that there was another area further south that I could collect the final ear. And well, I needed to go there anyway, so I thought, why not? Let's just go there. Now, I'm still not sure that that was the greatest idea, because every time I killed one of these these yellowish centaurs, I lost some reputation. So I'm hoping that that reputation does nothing, but I guess I'll just need to wait and find out. So I went down the hill a bit to this area tucked into the hills where I simply needed to kill a load of skeletons. And this wasn't just a small amount of them. I needed to kill 30. And I got all the way to the end of this trail and I managed to clear out every single skeleton, and I still hadn't completed the quest. And that's when I got an invite from a dwarf, and we went and we finished the quest together, and we managed to get it done nice and quickly. However, he still had a lot of progress to make on his quest, so I decided to leave him behind so that I could go work on something else. So I went over to this goblin NPC where I came across my druid friend from earlier, but this quest was a bit of a unique one. Usually quests are something like go slay wolves and then bring me back 15 of their toenails, but this felt a lot like a retail quest because we needed to find these aged kodos and then tame them and bring them back to the goblin. I'm not saying I dislike the quest, it's just different. But whilst we were here, we also needed to collect kodo bones, which would sometimes spawn a kodo apparition when you pick them up. Now, the follow-up quest I was a bit skeptical about because I remember attempting it on one of my other characters and getting absolutely obliterated. But we needed to go back to where we were murdering skeletons and place down a ghost magnet, which would obviously attract ghosts that we then needed to kill. Now, I'm not sure what was so hard the first time I tried it, because it really wasn't that bad. Maybe it was just the amount of mobs that I struggled with, but as a hunter, I feel like I could take on a small army. Next, I went over towards Maraudon, because I saw on the map that there was another random quest giver here. So obviously, I had to investigate. Turns out it was a little goblin that had clearly been captured by the centaurs. And this was another escort quest. Nice and easy, until we got to the very end part, where we just so happened to run into a patrol of centaurs. And well, my goblin died, which meant that I failed the quest. Well, that's unlucky, but not much I can do about it apart from restart the quest. So that's what I did. I went back to her cage and I patiently waited for her to respawn. Now, the second time was exactly the same, including the part where she walked straight into another patrol of centaur and died. Now, after failing it twice, I was not about to go and wait a third time, so I skipped that quest. So all that's left to do now is go to the west coast of the zone for a final few quests, which I was able to pick up from a crashed little boat. Now, this was a very easy quest. We needed to find a silver key and a gold key. The silver key I was able to pick up from these giant lobsters, and the golden key I got from these seamen. I then needed to make the excruciatingly long swim to an island off the west coast to turn in the keys, and all that was left now was to turn in the quest. And honestly, thank God that we're done with this zone, because if I'm totally honest, it's just not that fun. The quests are somewhat unique, but spending 3 hours looking at grey gets pretty tiring. On the plus side though, that did get us to level 38. When I logged on the following day, I was ready for Stranglethorn Vale. However, I didn't do that and decided that I would go back to Arathi. Not for the regular quests though, but for the elite quests. Because I realized recently that actually doing the elite quest is like doing an outdoors dungeon. At least in terms of XP anyway. Now, I managed to find myself a couple of guys to do it with, and whilst we were waiting for others to join us, I decided to go back to the east and attempt a quest that I failed last time, which was the hints of a new plague escort. And well, it was going perfectly this time. We managed to get to the mob that we needed to defeat, and that's when the Forsaken patrol spawned directly on top of us. I mean, come on, what are the chances of that happening? So instead of dying, I decided to just run away and once again skip the quest, because my group was already over at the elite quest area and I wanted to go and meet up with them. Now, at the time, we didn't think that 3 of us would cut it for getting the quests done, but they also had a quest around here. So whilst we waited for more people, we decided to go and do that. They needed an arcane crystal thing that we could get from killing ogre shamans that were just around the corner. And well, half an hour later, we got their crystal things, but no one else had turned up to do the elite quests with us. So we decided that we would just give it a go anyway. I mean, what's the harm in that, right? So we began clearing our way into this building, which was just swarming swarming with enemies. But after a good 10 minutes of carefully pulling and killing every mob, we were standing in front of the bosses that we needed to kill. So we went at them using every piece of crowd control that we could. Gerald was tanking a few mobs and we kept a fear up at all times. But in the end, it just wasn't enough. However, it was just the boss left standing, meaning we could respawn and take him down without his annoying guards with him. And you know, I actually gained a lot more than I thought I would. We got almost half a level from that. So I would say that it was definitely worth it. It's time. It's finally time for Stranglethorn Vale. Now, I had already gone here previously and grabbed every single quest that I could, and that's why we are running from Duskwood, because we could just work our way down the entire zone and finish at Booty Bay by turning in all of the quests. Once here, I quickly stopped by this group of NPCs to pick up the last of the doable Curzon quests, since last time I wasn't high enough for it. I then quickly paid a visit to this group of explorers for their final quests, before proceeding with murdering crocodiles for some of their skin, which was nice and easy since we only needed 2 of it. I then moved south a little bit to where all of these trolls are, where we need to slay trolls for their ears. What is with this game and ripping off ears? Now, I don't think I've done this quest before, because every time I did come here, it was always swarming with hordes and hordes of horde. But this time it was being dominated by the Alliance, so we were able to smash our way through it. I then decided to head back up a little bit to the Curzon camp and enter into this house, where I turned in and picked up a quest from a small pile of books. I was then off to the back of the Curzon camp and into this cave to kill Curzon head shrinkers and Curzon commanders, and to turn in the quest that we picked up from the pile of books. So I then went back to the first group of NPCs to turn in the quest, and I actually never ended up doing their next quests. So instead, I went to the west to visit this small island where we needed to visit the island. Epic. I was then off to the east of Stranglethorn for a nice and simple quest of killing ventricle goblins for an item called Tumbled Crystal. I then went to do a quest that I remember all too well for some reason, and that's the Singing Crystal Shards. Now, I'm really not sure why I remember this quest so well, but I remember spending an insane amount of time trying to get this completed, because the item just never dropped. And well, it was the exact same this time. Luckily, right next to this quest was the Jungle Stalker Raptors that we needed to kill. Now, this quest was a little bit higher. However, some of the raptors were only level 40, so I kind of picked out those ones and we were able to get it done like that. And all that's left for this round of quests was, of course, to turn them in. Now, it wouldn't be a Stranglethorn Vale session if we didn't get jumped by a random group of horde. Now, at this point is when I decided to return to Stormwind to quickly update my abilities, because we were miles behind, before I once again returned to Stranglethorn Vale for another round of quests. So first up this time was gorilla killing, which was really as simple as it sounds. I then had to travel back north a bit to this river, where we once again had to murder crocodiles for some skin. I then had to return to the little island that we visited before, because I now had to kill water elementals that were roaming around. Now, originally I wasn't sure if I should go up here, because I know for a fact that this is a pretty popular farming spot for max levels, since these guys can drop elemental water, which is due to spike in price once Nax comes out. But apart from me and one other leveler, it was completely fine. Now, the next quest was a very tedious quest, because we needed to collect troll tusks. Now, the way I think you're supposed to do this quest is by going inside the camps and taking them out there. However, all the mobs in there were just too high for me. However, on the outskirts, there were a few mobs placed around that were just perfect level for me. So I spent like 30 minutes running around killing these loose mobs. And well, I was minding my own business killing my mobs when I happened to notice that there was a rogue running around behind me. So I decided to place a flare on top of me. And the absolute stupidity of this rogue was incredible. He ran directly into the flare, and using Gerald's stun, we were able to get our distance from him and we absolutely stomped him. Nothing made makes me more happy than ruining a rogue's day, apart from maybe getting the Drakefang Talisman trinket, but I haven't gotten that yet, so I don't know if the feeling is comparable. But after eventually getting all the tusks that we needed, I began moving south again so that I could attempt the Singing Blue Crystal quest. Now this might be the most infuriating quest I have ever done. The mobs are so tightly packed that you could never just pull one at a time. They hit extremely hard, and to top that off, the item never friggin' drops. But I gave it my best go, but in the end, I decided it was just too hard and was taking too long to get done. Now at this point, we were very close to level 40, and I decided that a little dungeon run would get us there. So I returned to Scarlet Monastery. Nah, I'm just kidding, I went to Razorfen Downs. Now I don't know what it is with this dungeon, but every single character I've made so far has ended up running this dungeon at least a couple times, and it's not like I really enjoy the dungeon or anything. It just seems to be in the perfect level range for when I run out of things to do. So the first boss is Tutankhash. He's a big spider guy, and he did drop the very nice chest piece for the tank. We then made our way over to this quest giver to start the escort quest, which I missed because I'm just an idiot. Now whilst we were waiting for this guy to do his thing, it's worth noting that there really isn't much loot in here for us. There is the flesh hide shoulders, which I already said to the rogue he can have if they drop. And besides, the one I had already were kinda just better for us anyway. But the other item is the swine fists, which is not a massive upgrade by any means, but it would give us a slight agility increase. And as a hunter, what else can I ask for? And the boss from the escort quest does actually drop them for us. So not massive, but it's at least something. Now right after this, the tank said that he needed to leave, and that was kind of a gut punch for me because we literally only needed 5k XP to reach level 40, but luckily as a group we decided to continue clearing the dungeon as 4 until we could get another tank, which I gotta say was not as bad as I thought it would be. We even managed to kill Mordresh as a group of 4, but lucky for us we were able to get another tank relatively quickly, and we could then take on Glutton, who unfortunately did not drop the shoulders for the rogue. And not long after, we hit level 40. So we quickly finished up here by taking down Amnanar. So level 40 is one of the biggest milestones in anyone's leveling journey, because we now unlock dual specking. But not only that, but we can purchase our first mount. So excitedly, I made my way over to Darnassus. Now on my first night elf, I chose the spotted frost saber, and just to spice it up a bit this time, I went for the striped night saber. And with that done and done, we had achieved our goal for today. I hope you all enjoyed today's video because I definitely enjoyed making it. So I know that a lot of you guys were asking for longer videos, so I've done my best to give that to you. So please give me feedback on it in the comments. Was it too long? Was it still too short? Was I yapping about nonsense too much? And I know there was a larger gap between this video and the last, but so long as you guys enjoyed it in this format, then that's all I can really ask for. Remember, you can now also become a member of the channel to access some loyalty badges, as well as all unreleased, deleted, and unlisted videos. The other thing is that at the time of recording this little outro, we need 13 subscribers until we reach 10k, which is just insane. Now, I've got to admit, I've not really got anything special planned for it, because to be honest, we've gotten here a hell of a lot quicker than I had expected. But if you have any ideas for something special we could do, drop it in the comments, and maybe we could come up with something special together. Anyway, I think that is enough yapping for today. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you all later.